that make people decide anything. And it's not what you think. There's a good book called Getting More by this Wharton professor, and he says something very interesting. So if you're trying, let's say you have an idea, you're an entrepreneur, you're going to be an entrepreneur, you got a new product you want to sell, you're the next Bill Gates, the next Mark Zuckerberg. Well, I always say, if a tree falls in the middle of the woods, you know that old cliche, if a tree falls in the middle of the woods, will anybody hear it? And I always say, who cares? Because if nobody hears and nobody knows about what you're doing, you can have the most brilliant idea and it will just die, you know, and that happens all the time. A lot of the products that you see out there at the store or, you know, online aren't necessarily the best. Now, ideally, you can have a good quality product, a good quality service, and at the same time, be able to be good at marketing. And marketing, I don't even like the word marketing, it's really about persuasion. So there's these 25 biases. They're called the 25 cognitive biases. I'm going to list out a few and how you can use them today to improve your marketing. And if you're not an entrepreneur, you can still use this. You can use this to make people like you more. And I don't mean that in like a cheesy way, but let's say you need to network and meet a certain person who has access to something you need, whether it's your boss, whether it's, you know, you're in the entertainment industry, you need to meet new people. It's the same principle. So this Wharton professor, Getting More, one of the interesting things he says is that 60% of what makes people decide anything, decide to listen to you. Let's just talk about, you know, how to win friends and influence people. 60% is not what you think. It's what they think of you as a person. It's not even what you're saying. It's what they think of you as a person. Do they like you? You know, people are fickle. If they don't like your, sometimes I get people saying, oh, Ty, if you're, you know, this business dude, why aren't you dressed up super fancy for these talks? I'm like, well, if you don't like it, that's okay. You don't have to listen. I understand, though, that it's a person thing. It's the basis of all persuasion. That's why most big businesses, most awesome things are built around some figurehead. You know, you had a figurehead like Bill Gates, Steve Jobs for Apple, Zuckerberg. We all know these people's names and we associate. That, by the way, of the 25 scientifically proven cognitive biases, this is called the association bias, the liking bias. Now, what's the other 30%? Now, remember, what I just said is pretty crazy about, if you think about it, what this Wharton professor found. By the way, his book, Getting More, and his class at Wharton is the most sought after business class in the world. So the beauty of the internet is right now, I'm showing you the same things you would learn if you got a, you know, MBA at the Harvard, Wharton, all that. So internet's pretty crazy what you can get for free these days. I don't know if I'm gonna have time to do all 25, but let me give you some of these now. And for those of you who want more, I'll show you how you can, I'm gonna do a talk on all these. If you wanna find out really in depth how to do this, I keep these videos a little bit short so that people don't, I know you got a lot to do. So the other 30% of what makes marketing and persuasion work, what makes you be able to influence people, win friends, the other 30% is the process you use. So like the order that you present things. This is the strategy part. And notice this, and I'm rounding the numbers, it's more like 57% or whatever. I'm just making it easy. 10% is what? This is crazy. That means if you have an idea for the next, you know, fitness pal, now the next fitness app, for the next supplement, for the next restaurant, hotel concept, for doing real estate deals, what you're selling is a minor part of what makes people decide. And this has implications. This is the stuff you don't learn in high school, and most parents, you know, our parents didn't know to teach us because they didn't know this ourselves. You got to learn this stuff. You want to make $1 million bucks, or maybe you don't care about money, you want to change the world, you know? You want to solve injustice, crime, poverty, homelessness, abuse. It all comes to your ability to persuade. And so if you're going in, see, most people do this completely opposite. They focus on the what they're selling. In fact, today a guy was texting me who wants me to invest in his app, and he's like, hey Ty, here's what my app's about, bum, 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 bum. But you know what? He hasn't sold me yet, because I'm an investor. People ask what I do, I'm an investor. He hasn't sold me yet on him as a person. He's got to do a better job. It's not just two of them. They got to do a better job showing me, if they want millions of bucks, they want me to invest money like that. I have to believe in them as a person. This is how our brain is set up. There's a professor I just interviewed named Joseph Ledoux, professor at NYU, and he talks about how we have these parts of our brain that are very primitive. So whenever you're selling and persuading people about your idea, whether it be investors or somebody you want to date, what do they think of you? What's the gut feeling they get? People operate on hunches, for good or bad. Now the process with which so just think about this in like a dating context. What makes people want to go on a second date with you? Okay, number one is, are they attracted to you as a person? Number two is, how do you do the date? Like if your first date, you propose to them, you get down on one knee, they're gonna be scared off because you seem desperate, right? So the process with which you go through the dating, seduction, persuasion, whatever words you want to use. What you actually talk about, I mean, what the date actually is, whether you go to Chinese food or Italian food, that's not how people determine. Yet a lot of people fixate on the wrong things. Fixate on you as a person, the perception. There's a good book by Heidi Halvorson, and it talks about how basically how we perceive ourselves is only about 30% correlated, I think I have that right, with how other people see us. Meaning most of us are going through life with a blur. We're like seeing ourselves as whatever, this amazing person. We see ourselves as better looking than we are, or maybe worse than we are, right? We have self-esteem issues. You really have to be able to pinpoint and control, not in a manipulative way, but you have to be able to control the perception of the person that you're talking to. My neighbor decided to blow leaves while I'm talking. Anyway, so a couple other things. So these are the different biases. The main thing to take away, people are not that logical. And you may have heard this before, but I'm telling you, this has mind-blowing implications because you got to put it into practice. That's why, for guys, I always say, Ryan Gosling in these movies, he did this movie called Only God Forgives, and it's such a Ryan Gosling movie. He doesn't even talk in the movie the first like 5 or 10 minutes. But women are still attracted to him because it's the person and the process. It's not about what he's saying. And so when you bring this back around to, let's say you want to build $1 million company, same principle. What do people's instinctual gut feeling? And that, by the way, that's why Apple has now become the largest company in the world and surpassed Microsoft. People have iPhones much more than they are in Apple products because now Apple's not a person, but I mean legally in the United States a corporation is a person, but it's an entity, and people like Apple. Steve Jobs was the king of making Apple cool, making it like it was kind of this anti-technology yet still technological. Like Microsoft was like hardcore corporate, and Apple pulled off this coup business-wise. They're now worth $700 billion valuation. I think it's the largest valuation in history of humans because Steve Jobs understood this. Now, what they're selling is still a good product. So that's why I said you don't want to be good at marketing and sell a crappy product. Like Charlie Munger says, you can't polish a turd. So if you have something horrible and you just want to make $1 million, I hope you won't listen to this. Now, I've just given you one of the angles. There's 25 more. I'm not going to get, how long have we been going here for?
Oh. 10 minutes.
Yeah, so I'm going to, I'll go a few more minutes. So, but I am going to do a free talk, an online talk. I've been doing this series of online talks. They fill up quick, and I'm not just saying that, literally do. I crashed the servers the last 3 times I did it, so you should see a link below here. Click the link if you want to hear the full talk, and I'm going to talk on the full 25 techniques to master $1 million persuasion. So the other thing is, click the link. It's free. You just put in you just register, and it'll hold your spot. If you wait too long, I'm telling you, it fills up. Last time we had to not let a whole bunch of people on. So click the link. It's either above or below, wherever. Now, another one of these, okay? And I'm not going to flip the page because it's very windy today. So I'm going to put a little number 2 here. The story. So if you study philosophy, real high-level philosophy, there's all these concepts, whether they be, cosmological, whether it be epistemology, all these different kind of fancy words. Well, ontology is one of them. And I'm gonna break it down in layman's terms. All humans are like their brains are like a movie theater, and they are projecting a movie, and it's their perceptions of life. So here's one mistake you can make, and I've made this mistake. If you want to lose a lot of money real quick, I didn't understand this. I lost $28 million over a few years in lost revenue from not understanding what I'm about to tell you. And what it is that to move people and actually convince them is very difficult. In fact, most people that agree with you, when you think you're good at persuading, they already agreed with you before. You know, sometimes I get too big of a head and I get cocky and think I'm good at marketing, but what's really happening in large part for all of us is that you're finding the people who already kind of agree with you. And so if your idea is that you're going to make such a good marketing angle that all the people that hate, you know, imagine if Steve Jobs goes, everybody who hates cell phones, I'm going to market my iPhone to them. Forget it. You must market to the story that's already in people's head, especially if you want to get the low-hanging fruit and make money relatively quickly. Now, there is a time when there's a book written about this called Crossing the Chasm, where you'll cross over and you'll be able to reach what's called the pragmatists, the conservatives. You do that later. At the beginning, to make your first $1 million company, you want to find the people that the story, the movie that's already playing on the screen of their brain is already aligned with what you do. And then all you have to do is show them how it's aligned. So the concept of persuasion a lot of times is you take somebody who's over here and you show them why they should be over here. But what you want to do is take the person that's already here and doesn't realize you're right next to them. So you use a little persuasion to be like, hey man, we're already right